Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of the most iconic names in bodybuilding. So much so that he even has a workout split that he supposedly followed during his peak, named after him, known as the Arnold Split. Now, the Arnold Split is followed by millions of lifters around the world, but is it actually optimized for building muscle? Well, in this video, I'm going to be critiquing the Arnold Split across what I believe to be the three most important factors that go into a truly optimized workout split for building muscle. But first off, let me show you what an Arnold Split actually is. Now, the Arnold Split is a 6-day workout split that goes like this: Monday chest and back, Tuesday shoulder and arms, Wednesday legs, Thursday we go back to chest and back, Friday we go back to shoulders and arms, and then we cap it off on Saturday with legs, followed by a rest day on Sunday. So you're hitting every major muscle group roughly twice per week, with most sessions involving 4 to 8 exercises in one workout, as well as often incorporating a lot of supersets antagonistically between push and pull. For example, bench press and rows. It's a whole lot of volume and pretty upper body dominant like, well, Arnold himself. So now that we know what the Arnold Split is, let's see if it holds up against my 3 criteria, which goes like this. First one is a lifestyle viability. Number 2 is volume and frequency. And number 3 is fatigue management. So without further ado, let's begin with number 1. Now, criteria number 1 is lifestyle viability. And speaking of lifestyle, if you're looking to upgrade your gym fits, the Able Summer Sale is still live right now. It is up to 60% off site-wide, men's and women's. Plus, if you use code PATH, you get an additional 10% off at checkout. So that's effectively up to 70% off with code PATH. I think Able is probably one of the most underrated gym clothing brand. They have a wide array of different types of gym fits, but I want to especially talk about their shorts. Not gonna lie, if you're under 5'8" and you're a guy, Able size extra small shorts are probably one of the best fitting shorts I've ever tried. You can get them in pretty much any color, 5 or 7 inch inseams. So definitely if you're gonna check that out, now is a good time while the sale still lasts. But with that said, back to the criteria. So I define lifestyle viability as how reasonably can you expect someone to be able to be consistent with their workout routine, because after all, the workout routine is only as good as your ability to actually stick to it. A 6-day split that is optimized for hypertrophy sounds good on paper, but if you're missing like every other workout every single other week, then you'll be hindering the effectiveness of that workout routine severely. And missing a workout is especially bad on a muscle group concentrated workout split like the Arnold Split, because let's say if you miss Monday, well, there goes half of your volume for chest and back. Now, the Arnold Split pretty much gives you 2 options when it comes to workout days. Either a 6-day split, or technically speaking, you can do a 3-day split, but for the reasons I'm about to get into later in this video, I would only recommend you really do that 6-day split. And let's be honest, not everyone is as crazy as I am and wants to go 6 days per week in the gym. The verdict when it comes to lifestyle viability, I'd only recommend the Arnold Split if you can commit 6 days in the gym per week. Otherwise, there's probably a better split out there for you. You can check out this recent video I made on why I think the upper-lower split is underrated for muscle growth. Let's move on to criteria number 2. Now, criteria number 2 is training volume and frequency. This is a juicy one. Now, training volume has 2 main components to it. 1, the work being done, and 2, the time frame we're referencing here. Now, because we're examining training volume at the workout split level, we're gonna be quantifying work as the number of sets and time frame as 1 week, as that's how most workout splits are organized. Now, in general, most studies show that somewhere in between 8 to 20 sets per muscle group per week is the sweet spot for optimizing hypertrophy. Now, I get it, that is a pretty big range, but bear with me. These sets for exercises that involve other muscle groups outside the target muscle, so let's think triceps on a bench press, can be counted as half a set to your total weekly volume for that muscle group. So in the case for bench press, when you're counting for triceps, you would count half a set for triceps when you're doing bench press. And for the record, you also should not include warm-up sets when you're counting that 8 to 20 sets. Which means when it comes to the Arnold Split, you need to get roughly 4 sets per muscle group in each workout, which is honestly pretty doable. And in fact, I think this is probably one of the strongest strengths when it comes to the Arnold Split, assuming that you're doing the traditional 6-day Arnold Split and not the 3-day one I mentioned earlier. Now, a close cousin to training volume is frequency, which is essentially how often you're training a muscle group throughout the week. And studies have shown that training a muscle group twice per week is more advantageous for hypertrophy compared to training that muscle group only once per week. And this makes logical sense. You're providing the muscle a stimulus more often, which means you can probably extrapolate this and say that training a muscle group 3 times per week is probably better for hypertrophy compared to training muscle group twice per week, and most definitely better than training muscle group only once per week. But this is barring any fatigue problems, of course. And of course, with the 6-day Arnold Split, you're gonna be training most muscle groups twice per week. However, there's one thing we're not accounting for, and that is the fact that the arms, biceps and triceps that is, are also gonna be involved on your chest and back day, albeit to a smaller degree. So really it's 2 times per week for chest, back, shoulders, and legs, and then more closer to like 4 times per week for arms. So from a quantity standpoint that is only assessing training volume, Arnold Split does pretty well for chest, back, legs, and shoulders, but it does exceptionally for the arms. So the verdict when it comes to training volume and frequency, well, the Arnold Split is fairly optimized for chest, back, legs, and shoulders, but if arms is particularly a weak point for you, the Arnold Split is probably gonna be one of the best splits for biceps and triceps growth. Now I bet you didn't think about that. And this is why I urge the importance of actually having a workout routine that is optimized for your specific individual goals, which is why I highly recommend you apply to my exclusive one-on-one fitness coaching program where I do that in an actual sustainable way. Custom workout routines based off your own schedule, a nutrition protocol that offers a good level of flexibility, as well as weekly check-ins and the ability to get all your questions answered. So if that sounds interesting to you, check out the link in the description, apply there. Now the last criteria is fatigue management and intensity. So I want you to think of training volume and frequency as the quantity part of your training, and then managing fatigue and the intensity as the quality part. Now let's start with intensity. This is essentially how hard you're training in a set. Now there's many different ways to quantify intensity, but one of the most common ways is using a metric called reps in reserve. Now reps in reserve, often abbreviated as RIR, is an estimate of how close to failure you were in a set. For example, let's say we did a set of bench press. If we were 1 rep shy of failure after completing that set, that would be an RIR, or reps in reserve, of 1. If we were 2 reps shy of failure, that would be an RIR of 2. And then if we went all the way to failure, then that would be an RIR of 0. Now, if your goal is to maximize muscle growth, you ideally want to be taking the sets at RIR 2 and under, meaning in general on all your working sets, you ideally want to only be leaving roughly 2 reps in the tank, if not lower than that, and occasionally training all the way to failure. Now, this is because it is the reps closest to failure that elicits the most mechanical attention, which I want you to think of mechanical attention as the stimulus that actually leads to muscle growth. Now, a common thought process is, well, in that case, I'm just going to take every single set to failure since I'm going to be maximizing the most mechanical attention that way. And technically speaking, that is correct if you're only looking at that one particular set. But there's a thing called fatigue that makes things a little bit more complicated. You see, think of fatigue as the waste byproduct of training at a high intensity. The closer to failure you train, the better the stimulus for muscle growth, but also the more fatigue you incur, which means if we zoom out at a weekly or even monthly level, we want to find that balance of providing as high of a stimulus for muscle growth as possible, while also managing fatigue so that we're not overtraining, increasing our risk of injury, and pretty much just being stuck at plateaus. So moving on to fatigue management, there are other factors outside of just training intensity that also impact fatigue, including both volume and frequency. Tragic. Now I'm specifically going to focus on intra-workout volume. This is the amount of volume within one workout. Now in general, the higher the intra-workout volume for that muscle, the more fatigue you incur for that muscle, as well as the worse your performance generally will be on those later exercises. So let's say it's Monday, chest and back day. Maybe we start out with a barbell bench press, and then we move on to an incline Smith machine bench press, and then we do chest flies all in one day. Now I'm willing to bet by the time you get to flies, your chest is probably toast and you're probably not going to be breaking any PRs anytime soon. In my opinion, this is what I would deem suboptimal programming. Well, let's not stop there. Another thing I mentioned earlier that impacts fatigue is frequency. Now, ideally, a great way to keep fatigue at bay is making sure that you're allowing 48 hours of rest before training that muscle group again, which on an Arnold Split can reasonably be done on back as well as legs. But when it comes to chest, you're probably slightly training your chest on the shoulder day. And when it comes to arms, you're most definitely going to be breaking that 48-hour rule because, like I mentioned before, your biceps and triceps are likely going to be involved on your chest and back day. Now, this long-term can lead to issues with recovery and managing fatigue for notably the biceps, triceps, and a little bit of the chest. So literally what made the Arnold Split good for arms from a quantity perspective made it bad from a quality perspective. especially when considering managing fatigue. So the verdict when it comes to fatigue management and intensity, doing shoulders and arms the next day after a chest and back day is suboptimal programming. You likely will run into recovery issues for the biceps and triceps. Instead, if you wanted to train 6 days per week in the gym, I'd recommend some sort of double PPL split or a 3X upper-lower split. At least with these splits, you're not gonna have those overlapping muscle group issues. Also, it is worth mentioning that another important factor when it comes to optimizing muscle growth is making sure your nutrition is on check. If you're putting this much effort into training side of things, might as well make sure your diet is also somewhat optimized. And a great, easy way to do so is making sure that you're hitting 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight on a daily basis. Of course, a super convenient way to make sure you're getting roughly 20 grams of protein in a pretty good, tasty way is by making sure you have a high quality third-party tested protein powder like the ones from MyProtein, which is my supplement sponsor. I recommend their clear whey protein because they have the best macros in a protein powder possible. Plus, it's meant to be taken with water since it's a juice-like flavor. They also just dropped some new flavors like passion fruit, lemon iced tea, and what else is there? Yuzu. So if you're interested, you can use code TPATH to get an additional 45% off at checkout. It's a great way to support my page. The support would be much appreciated. If not, I just ask that you like this video. It's a great free way to support my videos and the continued delivery of these because we're chugging along. But now, moment of truth. Is the Arnold Split an optimized split for muscle growth? If you want my honest and humble opinion, I personally think there are other workout splits that are more optimized and strike a better balance of managing fatigue, keeping junk volume low, while also still allowing you to hit your volume and frequency requirements. But at the end of the day, people, the best workout split is the one that you enjoy and you can stick to and actually you're motivated to go and just crush your workout. So in that case, if you truly love the Arnold Split, go ahead and just keep on doing it. But from a technicality perspective and based off of the number of days in the gym you can reasonably go to, I think one of these splits will probably be better. So feel free to check out these videos I did on the upper lower split, the bro split, the full body split, and even the PPL split. Maybe you're gonna learn something. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.